stand. Please honor the Steward.
Let's pray for God's guidance and protection and strength. Guide us, Lord, in all our doings with your most gracious favor. Further us with your continual help. In all our works begun, continued, and ended with you, may glorify your holy name, and by your mercy attain everlasting life through Jesus Christ our Lord. And may the strength of God pilot us. May the power of God preserve us. May the wisdom of God instruct us. May the hand of God protect us. May the way of God direct us. May the shield of God defend us. May the host of God guard us against the snares of evil and the temptations of the world. May Christ be with us, Christ before us, Christ in us, Christ over us. May your salvation, O Lord, be always ours this day and forevermore. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Yes, and observe the silence. Could you all stand to observe 1 minute silence in memory of the Honourable Lindsay Bolden, former Minister of Transport, and also the mother of the Attorney General of Ours.
Who is speaking to? Sandy.
This House is in session. Minutes for the meeting held on Tuesday, 5th of November 2024 to be deferred. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
Beatty, second that.
Question that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Thank you, Hef. Again, the boss using the microphone that belongs to the Reverend.
I am received a message from the Honourable the Senate to the Honourable the House of Assembly. The Honourable the Senate has the honour to inform the Honourable the House of Assembly that at its sitting on Friday, 8th November 2024, the Merchant Shipping Bill 2024 was amended in the following terms. Clause 57, the word BPI was deleted and the words central bank substituted therefore. Clause 64, 1, the words shall mean were deleted and the words shall maintain substituted therefore. And the Honourable the Senate transmit the amended bill to the Honourable the House of Assembly inviting concurrence in the amendments to the bill. Signed, President, dated the 8th day of November 2024.
Messages from Her Excellency the President, petitions, papers, government notices.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of a resolution that the Honourable the House of Assembly concur in the amendments made by the Honourable the Senate to the Merchant Shipping Bill 2024.
Private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the withdrawal of order number 12 on the order paper, the Maritime and Underwater Heritage Bill 2024, dated the 7th of November, and to replace it with the Maritime and Underwater Heritage Bill 2024, dated the 11th of November 2024.
Beg to second the motion.
Question that order 12 be withdrawn and substituted therefore. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the Business Barbados Bill 2024 and also the first reading of the Maritime and Underwater Heritage Bill 2024.
Beg to second that, sir.
Question that the aforementioned bills be read a first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motion for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Beg to second that.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
You got a resolution, did you? in the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the passing of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 2, of the Special Loans Act, Cap 105, the borrowing by the government of the sum of approximately 600 million Barbados dollars from CIBC, Caribbean Bank Barbados Limited, Scotia Bank Barbados Limited, and RBC Royal Bank Barbados Limited on the terms and conditions contained in a sustainability-linked syndicated facility agreement, the main provisions of which are set out in the schedule, the proceeds of which will be used to buy back an approximate equivalent amount in high cost of government of Barbados debt.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Before we begin, sir, through you, I want to wish all males in Barbados a happy International Men's Day. I know we don't often get to celebrate such things, but I think it was important this morning to start off on that note, sir. So, thank you. We have come here, sir, and I'm mindful of the short description that the clerk read in his introduction to this bill, because a lot has been said, sir, about the level of debt that this country has, and I want to assure the country through you, sir, as we have been reporting since coming to office, that the debt restructuring that we undertook in 2018, sir, was as a result of the fiscal indiscipline that was practiced by the Democratic Labour Party administration prior to us taking office, sir. And therefore, we have had to make adjustments in order to improve the delivery of services for the country. And it's coincidental, sir, that as we are here today discussing this particular piece of debt, Barbadians would be reminded, sir, of when the South Coast Sewage plant, sir, when sewage was flowing in the streets of Barbados for nearly 3 years, unfettered, sir, to the point where we were given multiple travel advisories, warning people as to what they may face if they choose to come to Barbados. And it was a point of shame, sir, for all of us as Barbadians, because no responsible government in our contemplation, sir, would have sewage running freely in the streets for 3 years with no solution in sight. Of course, sir, you know that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East led a very robust response, sir, by this government, having identified it as mission critical, that we would ensure there was a temporary fix once we sought a long-term solution to be able to resolve the matters as it related to the South Coast Sewage plant. And let it not be said that it was not only the South Coast Sewage plant, sir, that was impacted, but we all remember, sir, the large pumpkins that were growing at Bridgetown, which just spoke to the lack of care and attention that the last government foisted upon the people of Barbados. So a lot has been said since then, sir, about the level of debt and what we had to do and those concerns, and legitimately so, from the perspective that if you only look at the number as opposed to the quality of public goods and public services and what Barbadians have been able to see as a result of the interventions of this government, I think any reasonable Barbadian will attest that a number of the range of services have been improved. Nothing is perfect, but a lot of the services have been improved, sir. And the extent to which we are now seeing I use the term return to normality, not to convey that we are going back to the so-called good old days, but to reinforce in Barbadians' minds that when we speak of transformation and wanting to see improvements, it means that you must do things differently, sir. You would recall, sir, there were many a year when Barbadians would be glued to their television sets or radios coming to this place to hear what the Minister of Finance will conjure by way of new taxation, sir. That has not been the lived reality of Barbadians under this government. And I start there, sir, because ordinarily, under the last government, in order to finance solutions like that, sir, it would have meant some set of taxation. And I will expand further on that. But we have put together, sir, through this particular transaction, an opportunity for us to be able, not just to, in this case, sir, through the special loans, to issue $600 million. But the use of this $600 million, sir, is to repurchase existing debt, which is currently, some of it is currently now, the interest rate is at as high as 8%, sir. And we are going to repurchase some of that debt in order to reissue at a lower level in order to be able to finance, sir, the upgrade of the South Coast sewage plant. Now, why is this important, sir? Because I think Barbadians will have heard on more than one occasion, we speak to the fact that there has been, because of the debt situation that we were faced with, we had to restructure in order to create fiscal space, sir, meaning resources to purchase garbage trucks, resources to purchase buses, sir, resources to be able to expand the capacity of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, resources, sir, to be able to address a myriad of issues, resources to fix roads and a whole range of other things that Barbadians were crying out for. And therefore, we have had to find ways to be able to deliver on government's overall mandate, sir, under very constrained circumstances. Of course, we had COVID and a range of other things in the middle there as well, sir. But I believe we've been able to find ways to create the space to do some of the very critical things that we have identified as part of the mission critical agenda. The fact that it's taken as long as this, sir, in relation to finding this particular intervention is regretted, but I believe that the long-term sustainability of our efforts and what we are trying to do to build climate resilience and to be able to be responsible, not just as a country, but certainly as a people, to be responsible, I think is important to appreciate. You would recall, sir, that 2 years ago, we came to this place and we did a debt for nature swap. And let me remind the country through you, sir, that when we did that debt for nature swap, that debt for nature swap, all over the place now you see the marine spatial planning work taking place. They're all over Barbados, engaging Barbadians, sir. The Barbados Environmental Sustainability Fund was set up. The Marine Spatial Planning Unit has been set up, working alongside the Coastal Zone Management Unit, sir, all over Barbados, engaging Barbadians around what we will do in relation to the marine environment and to be able to plan out sustainable use of that particular Barbadian asset, the ocean. Now, of course, sir, as you know full well, when we came to office, the sewage was flowing on the streets, but also flowing into the marine space, sir. It was also flowing into the Graham Hall swamp, sir. And I know that the honourable member who is the MP for that area is more than familiar with the impact that it had on the residents of that constituency, as well as the other surrounding areas, but more broadly, sir, the country. And therefore, the impact that it had on the natural environment, sir, the natural environment was significant. And whilst I know as Barbadians, as people, we would tend to focus a lot more perhaps on the economics and the health and and that side of things, there was a significant marine as well as environmental impact of really, sir, what could only be described as a dereliction of duty by a government that allowed this thing to happen for 3 years without any resolution in sight, sir. And I raised that because as we did the debt swap 2 years ago to focus on how do we preserve and enhance our environmental sustainability efforts, the fact that we had a sewage plant discharging effluent, sir, all across Barbados in the beaches, sir. If you recall, sir, even some of the members of that government went swimming in it, which was, I think, a point of shame, personal shame. But they sought to view it as some type of political stunt. But the reality is, sir, is that there was a significant environmental impact in relation to that. What we are seeking to do with this specific intervention, sir, is consistent with government's policy of treating to the environment in the same way that we would treat to the economics, sir, to the public health issues, to the social development issues, sir, because as a small state, stability is really our only asset, and stability has many facets, sir, but whatever we do onshore impacts the offshore environment, sir, and therefore we must not separate the two. And therefore, this particular resolution today is just a step to demonstrate that our policy has been coherent, sir, from day one. From day one. And rather than now having the continued discharge of effluent into the marine space, we will be upgrading the South Coast sewage plant, which to tertiary, sir. As you are well aware, sir, the Bridgetown sewage plant is also being upgraded to tertiary level, sir. And this is part of how Barbados's long-term trajectory, sir, and quite frankly, sir, our climate resilience, given that we have been exposed to, I mean, in recent days, one might not believe it, with the volume of rain that has been falling, but as you know, sir, as soon as we turn the year, the ground will start to open up dry, sir, as it does in January, February, and March, because the drought conditions have been getting harsher and harsher. We've been getting more intense rains, causing localized flooding, and a lot of that water, because of the force of it, sir, has been running into the ocean. I know that we're trying to do as much rainwater harvesting as we can, but as you know, sir, if you put the infrastructure in one place, but the rain falls somewhere else, then it with the intensity that it does, as well as the capacity, because you would appreciate, sir, that we've been having some very intense rains, which has been pretty much overwhelming the existing infrastructure simply because it's not been able to accommodate the volumes of water within such a short space of time, and therefore having some challenges across the country. And this is part of the climate change impact, and we're trying our best, sir, to make sure that Barbados is not exposed over the long term. So we're here today, sir, to deal with the financing of this. But I'm saying to Barbadians, sir, that in the same way that the previous debt swap allowed us to be able to use existing debt service, and we are putting monies every 6 months, sir, into the Environmental Sustainability Fund, which is allowing the Marine Spatial Plan and the other stakeholders to be able to use those interest payments to deal with the marine work and milestones that we agreed to under that specific transaction. What we recognize here, sir, is that in order for us to be able to get a new plant that will serve the long-term interests of Barbados, sir, it meant that we had to work with the Inter-American Development Bank as we did with the previous debt swap. We also worked with the European Investment Bank, sir, on the guarantee side, again, as well as we worked with the Green Climate Fund, sir. And these local banks, as the intermediaries, sir, to be able to execute this particular transaction here today. But of course, sir, we cannot wait 15 or 20 years, sir, to upgrade a plant, because the plant needs financing to be able to be upgraded. And therefore, we have entered into an arrangement, sir, where the savings from this particular transaction that we will see over the course of the 20 years, these savings will approximate to roughly about 150 million US dollars, sir. And therefore, if you accept, sir, over that period of time, we borrow the money up front, sir, to build the plant and the related infrastructure, and use the savings to pay off the capital loan that we are going to incur from IDB as well as the GCF in part. Then, in fact, sir, we would not have increased the debt at all, but the debt service, the total debt service, sir, would mean that we've been able to redeploy. If we do nothing, if we did not do this transaction today, sir, the debt is going to be paid, sir, and it will continue to be paid. And if we wanted to build a plant, sir, it would mean we have to go separately and borrow money specifically to do that, simply because we don't have a pool of money readily available to build the plant, which would increase that. So this specific arrangement, sir, allows us to do a couple of things. We buy back the debt at a cheaper interest rate, 3.25. I'll go through the details a little bit later on the term sheet of the transaction itself that we're here to discuss. But I'm saying to Barbadians that as we are doing this buyback at a cheaper interest rate, we will at the same time, sir, in order to construct the plant, sir, in order to construct the plant and the other infrastructure which is related to mains replacement for moving water for agricultural purposes, as well as some PV facilities as well to be able to do that, we will be issuing in terms of borrowing from IDB as well as GCF, the upfront capital costs to actually build the plant, sir. And the savings will finance the repayment of that loan. So that when you look at the overall debt structure for the country at the end of all of this transaction, sir, the country would not have incurred any new debt. But once we're able to issue the tender, and if I'm not mistaken, is either later this month or very early in December, sir, where we will be issuing the tender for the contractor to start the work, so which is where we need to get the transaction completed, that within the course of 18 months to 2 years, we should have a functioning tertiary treatment plant at Graham Hall, serving the long-term interests of Barbadians, sir. And we would have done so, sir, we would have done so without, sir, having to increase debt to the country. And I think that it's been long in coming in relation to getting to this stage, but I believe that this is the best deal that we could achieve, short of somebody saying, sir, they can give you $110 million to build the plant and give you grant money to do it, sir. And therefore, this particular transaction is significant, because as we have been meeting our target, sir, and as Barbados have been seeing that the government has been responding to the things that humbugging them, sir. And notwithstanding the fact that a lot of what we have been experiencing is driven in a large part by what has been happening outside of Barbados, sir. The government has been focused on ensuring that the structural matters that Barbadians have collectively been not just complaining, but agitating for solutions, that we have been focused on delivering those things. Now, sir, we have had to work, as I said, in this case, and with 3 banks. CIBC, First Caribbean, but I think they just rebranded. When we started the process, it was First Caribbean. They rebranded to CIBC sometime in the last year, I believe, sir. But anyhow, everybody knows it was either CIBC or First Caribbean. They know what I mean. Scotiabank, as well as RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, sir. 3 banks will participate in this buyback. CIBC, sir, will purchase up to 360 million of the 600 million that we are seeking to buy back here, sir. Royal Bank will be 140, and Scotiabank will be 100 million roughly in relation to the syndication, sir, with respect to the buyback. And this is significant because, as you would appreciate, sir, this is perhaps the single largest single transaction that the government has ever undertaken. And therefore, in order for us to be able to scale and get the type of savings that we know we can get to do this deal, to get this mission critical component that we set as a political party, all of us, sir, all of us in here, sign that document, sir, all of us in here, in some form or fashion. If I'm looking around the room, there may be those that came in after, but in principle, sir, all of us in here, I can safely say all of us in here, agreed and signed that document, identifying what was mission critical. And therefore, this really is a critical step in bringing a solution to a problem that was humbugging Barbadians unresolved for 3 full years. And I believe that, notwithstanding the fact that we were interrupted with COVID and a range of other things, that we had to focus on the things that were very basic for Barbadians, I can say to you, sir, that in any part of the world, water and sanitation, sir, next to law and order, water and sanitation, sir, they are the 2 most critical things that any society, in wanting to say that it is following any development modality, water and sanitation is the very basic things, sir, that any government must be able to demonstrate a commitment to resolving issues. Now we know, sir, that our mains need replacing, and this government certainly has been putting monies into the Water Authority to be able to advance the mains replacement program across the country. And we will continue, sir, to do that mains replacement, because you remember, sir, all too well, that that the northern part of Barbados, again, was all at that time that the sewage was flowing in the south. There were about 5 or 6 parishes in the northern part of Barbados, sir, at the same time that were experiencing acute water shortages, sir. And there was no investment at that time by the then government to bring relief to people, sir. And this Barbados Labour Party government, sir, identified that too as a mission critical issue. And because we were able to restructure the debt, sir, It took some time. I know the member for St. Peter can attest to that. The member for St. Lucie can attest. The member for St. Andrew and St. Joseph, St. John, St. Thomas, sir, and parts of northern St. James can attest. Whilst it took, and I know the members were quite agitated that they needed to get resolution for their constituents, and as a government, we put measures in place to be able to at least to resolve to a large part the access to water by building new reservoirs, putting in new mains. The honourable member for it started with the honourable member for Christchurch East when he was responsible, and then when the member for St. Michael West Central was the minister, and it continued under the deputy prime minister, the member for St. Michael Southeast, sir. This government, sir, has been responsible in prioritizing, sir, investment in the water and sanitation area. Sir, this is nothing to really boast about, you know, sir, because it demonstrated the lack of investment, sir, that is required to keep pace with the changing world. Because the last government, sir, refused to make those investments, those responsible investments, sir, that saw sewage flowing on the southern part of the country for 3 years, whilst at the same time, sir, acute water shortages across the north of the country. But we have responded, sir, and yes, there are a few little, some areas that need to be addressed, but this government has been responding, sir, and we shall continue to respond, because we have been making sure, sir, that we can finance a sustainable set of solutions to bring to Barbadians. But it can't happen without money, sir. Now, we can go back to the Auditor General's report, sir, that were written and presented in this chamber, sir, that cited the absolute waste of money that happened again during the last administration, sir. Within the same water sector, sir, including the new building and a whole set of other things that were not priorities, sir, in relation to delivering the water and sanitation mandate to people. Because if people can't get water and sewage flowing in the street, how can it be a priority, sir, to build a new building? How? But that's the record, sir, of the Democratic Labour Party. That's not the record of the Barbados Labour Party. The record of the Barbados Labour Party, sir, has been to respond to the very things that ordinary Barbadians, sir, require of a responsible government. And we are not going to shy away, sir, from that responsibility, because our record, sir, is second to none in this space, is second to none on the management of the economy, sir, is second to none in transportation, is second to none in energy, sir. You go second to none shortly in housing. You look across the areas that Barbadians want to see resolution, sir, and this government, sir, has been responding. So when we come here today, sir, to have a discussion about this particular transaction, and want Barbadians to appreciate that everything is linked, you know, sir. Everything is linked. And the government don't just wake up and decide that they can buy back debt just so. It is for a purpose. And that purpose, sir, is to ensure that going forward, one, we don't have sewage flowing in the streets like how it was on the Democratic Labour Party, sir. Two, you don't have sewage flowing into the Graham Hall Swamp, our nature sanctuary, sir. Is perhaps the only place of that type of wetlands and environmental beauty, if you like, sir, in Barbados. You understand? It has value, sir. And what we do affects there. It also affects the water quality near shore as well, sir. And therefore, as a responsible government, we have to explain the things that we are doing, sir, to improve people's lives. Now, you can't improve something, sir, without some type of disruption, you know. You cannot improve something without some set of disruption. So I know when the Honourable Minister was up late at night digging up the South Coast trying to figure out where the thing was leaking, sir, the rest was sleeping. They were asleep on the job when they had it, sir. And now walking about Barbados trying to pretend as if they're concerned about water issues for people. When they left people, sir, almost for dead. For 3-4 years in the north, sir, they may lay a pipe and build a reservoir and do nothing, sir, for people. But I don't want to pretend as if they're concerned about water issues for people. But I say no, sir. No. This government's record on water and sanitation, sir, is second to none. And I am a proud member of this government. As we go the length and breadth of this country to explain what we're doing, sir, we shall remind people, sir. Yes, there are going to be some irritants, because when you're trying to do something, sir, it don't happen perfect from A to Z. But we have been able to respond to the large measure, the majority of the issues in this country, sir. And we shall continue to respond to the issues in this country, sir. And therefore, let it be known, sir, that we ain't running from the responsibility of governing, sir. Because when we show up and we listen to people's concerns, sir, we go away, we find the appropriate solution, sir. And sometimes, sir, you know, everybody wants everything to happen with the snap of a finger. Life does not work like that, sir. Life does not work like that. Because if I spend the money, sir, I've said to you on more than one occasion, I have not yet learned how to spend money twice. If I spend money on this, sir, I can't spend money on this. And therefore, what we have been trying to do is to be responsible as a government, sir. Responsible, whilst responsive to the issues that continue to confront this country and the region and the world for that matter, sir. Because Barbados is not alone in this fight. And as a Christchurch MP, sir, we have seen, whilst we've been able to resolve matters in the north, as mains are being replaced and the pressure is being, so it's almost like a perfect storm. As you know, sir, the mains were put down probably over 100 and something years ago. You understand? When there was an empire. And Barbados ain't got no empire, sir. Then we don't got no indentured servants to come in and say, lay that pipe there. Because you know, my good friend is the member for St. George North, and said, no way. And rightfully so. And rightfully so. We can't just go and take up people's things and bring and say we can lay a pipe in Barbados or whatever it is, so just so. We don't have that luxury. And therefore, we have been putting money on budget to replace mains right across the country. But in recent times, we have seen within the Christchurch and Phillip area, as we've been replacing mains, sir, the outages coming. We've been encouraging people, sir, to get the water tanks in order to allow us to do a much accelerated implementation of the mains replacement. Because at the end of the day, sir, if Barbadians respond to, because you could do one or two things, sir. You can get a tank from the water authority and pay for it over 2 years on your water bill, sir. Or, as the government has done this year, sir, we have waived, and let me remind the public through you, sir, that we have waived the VAT on the tanks, the water pumps, and all of those things to make sure that the installation is much more affordable. But we ain't just waiving it because we want to waive it, sir, and say that we waive it, sir. We want to be able to ensure that we have, community by community, the adoption of these mechanisms, because when the disruption happens, sir, you don't even notice because you got your water tank there. But two, it allows us then to be more aggressive, sir, with the mains replacement across Barbados. If we can say, only by example, sir, if we tell the Kingston Endurance and that area that the water authority coming in and pulling out the main this weekend, everybody got a water tank, sir. It means that water authority can work, sir, to replace them by Monday morning. They know that whatever section that they've done, they have done. These are the kinds of things that will allow Bajans, sir, to see a better experience and we are working to coordinate and to achieve that. But it can only happen, sir, effectively, because at the end of the day, the water authority only got some tanks, water tanks, sir. And if the water tanks in Kingston, they can be in Juris, they can be in Regency Park, they can be in Calendars, they can be in Enterprise, sir. Is a logistics issue. And so as we have been resolving the issue, some of these issues, members, if they drive up to the Henry Ford roundabout, they will see some lovely blue pipe there where that going up to the ball section of the highway. And that is to ensure that having built the new reservoir there by Rising Sun, that the issues with respect to water outages can be reduced for that entire area, sir, from Newton to Kingston to Calendars on the eastern side, Thornbury Hill, sir, that section, Gore Hill and Wharton, and that entire area, sir, in relation to being able to ensure that people can continue to have access to water. But we're saying to Barbadians that there will be disruption. And if a pipe bursts, the pipe don't tell the water authority that it can burst at 3 o'clock in the morning, no, sir. The pipe don't say that they can burst at that time. You can get disruption. And therefore, as we go through this process of not just upgrading the plant to tertiary and all of these things, there's some things that I know the institution has to do. There are some commitments that is here which I will share with the public in relation to what the BWA will be required to do in exchange for a commitment for lower financing costs and to be able to achieve these issues. But the reality is that at the end of the day, there are still some humbugs across communities in Barbados where service lines are not being addressed as quickly as possible. These are some of the things that humbugging people about the management of water. And therefore, I know that we have been working to be able to address some of these issues. And therefore, as we work through the mechanics of being able to transform the way that the entity is able to respond to these things across Barbados, I'm saying to Barbados that there's some big things that have to be done, but there are also some small things that the institution, the Barbados Water Authority, also they have to do in order to meet the needs, sir, of people to ensure that we continue to keep faith with the Barbadian public. And these are important, sir, very, 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 very important. And therefore, that institutional strengthening and I know that process has started in relation to being able to address some of the things that more directly impact people. But a burst pipe here and a burst pipe there, those are complete annoyances and have to be addressed, because it is going to be important to have those addressed, because once we're able to have these facilities upgraded and our ability then to manage our water resources is better enhanced, then it means that efficiencies right across the system would have to be seen and felt by ordinary Barbadians. So it is a matter of public record, really, that the Water Authority has been certainly more responsible, because as the executing agency, the Water Authority has worked with, again, the private sector to be able to deliver the many reservoirs, new reservoirs, mains replacement, of mains, sorry, right across Barbados. These are the people, these are Bajans, sir, Bajans, getting up every day working to help improve the delivery of water for Bajans, you know, and they have been able to do so. But they've been able to do so because the government, sir, thinking, I don't like to say outside the box, sir, because some people's box may be a little smaller than some. And therefore, to the extent that we have been focused on finding creative solutions such that whether it's the Water Authority or any of the other state agencies can effectively deliver on their mandate, sir, this government, through its prudent fiscal management, have been able to allocate resources to allow these institutions to be able to live up in part, sir, to the mandate. And I know that the history is still there for some people, but I think that deep down, sir, most Bajans, if they're in their reflective moments, will say that yes, whilst things are not perfect, and I don't know that there was ever a time that things were perfect, but the reality is, this government, on the substance, sir, on the substance, have been able to respond, sir, to almost every challenge that this country has been faced with. And water and sanitation, sir, has been a major challenge. And we have been able to dedicate resources directly from the budget. We've been able to get grant resources through our advocacy under the Procedural initiative to be able to bring in grant resources to be able to respond to these challenges, sir. And therefore, it should not be lost upon Barbadians that when we go to Washington or any other capital in the world to make a case, sir, for why a small state like Barbados, very vulnerable, in almost on all fronts, but very vulnerable, should have the policy space and to be able to have access to either more grant financing or concessional funding to be able to deliver for Barbadians when there's been a decade, which we refer to as the lost decade, but the decade where there was little or no investment in the future of this country. And therefore we've had to work double time, sir, triple time, quadruple time, in order to make sure that we can help to foster and deliver a more sustainable path. But doing so against almost, sometimes, sir, it feels as if you're going against the currents, because there's always something, sir, around the corner lurking, trying to disrupt the progress that you've made. But we's Barbados, sir, and we don't give up. And this government certainly, sir, has been committed to the cause to make sure that it is not just fancy transactions, but these things resonate. Got it from St. Lucie, sir, to St. Philip in some form or fashion, and that people can make a connection, sir, to what the government is doing. And so this transaction is absolutely important. As I reflect now, sir, on the, there are not many times when you really reflect on how an instance of a financial transaction like this has a long-lasting impact on the country. And whilst the historic nature of it is critical, I think when we look back 25 years from now, sir, when we look back and what I hope will be a truly transformed Barbados, I think we will look back on this International Men's Day, sir, as the day that we were able to chart an improved Barbados Water Authority, sir, more access and predictable access to water, sir, a kind of resilience that means less inconvenience to them in their daily lives, and therefore it is to ensure that we have, as I said, a more sustainable future. But that now has to be delivered, sir, and will be delivered by Barbadians for Barbadians, based on the work that we've been able to do to be able to bring this particular transaction here. Now, sir, let me just move on quickly, just to cite the terms and conditions for the record of the House, which are in the schedule. And so the facility, as it says, is a fixed rate sustainability linked loan. The facility arranger is CIBC Caribbean Bank. The lenders, as I said earlier, are CIBC, Scotiabank, and Royal Bank. And I gave the breakdown in relation to, so CIBC 360 million, Scotiabank and Royal Bank will be up to 140, and as I indicated, Scotiabank up to 100 and RBC up to 140. And the amount we are buying back is the 600 million. interest rate, sir, is 3.25%. And as I mentioned earlier, sir, as I told, part of the portfolio is currently, the interest rate is currently 8%. Another part of the portfolio is 4.75, another part is 4.25, we believe, that we are targeting for the buyback. Now, so there are some sustainability performance targets, sir, which have been agreed, and I will refer to those a little later. The term is will be 20 years, sir, a grace period of 5 years and 3 months, sir. 5 years and 3 months grace period. It will mature, sir, in October of 2044, obviously 20 years. The repayment, 1.67% of the disbursed amount each quarter. And you have approximately 60 quarterly payments of $9,990 commencing in January 31st of 2030. So this, just for the benefit of the public, sir, through you, what this effectively means, sir, is that if we did nothing right now, if we did nothing, that 5 years and 3 months that I just referred to, the government of Barbados would have to pay on the existing debt, which is already at a higher interest rate, but have to continue paying the debt service. With this grace period, it means that we have some space, if you like, before we have to start repaying these creditors, the loan. Now, typically, we have had, in the past, not a lot of, well, when we restructured the debt, the grace period that we had in our restructured debt was 4 years. We're now seeing 5 years and 3 months in relation to this. Now, one could interpret this one or two ways, yeah? But I prefer to look at it as the fact that we've been able to demonstrate the responsibility of government. We being able to meet our targets under the fund program and other supported by the IDB and CAF and others in relation to what we've been doing. And therefore, people see the confidence as being demonstrated now with the upgrade, sir, as being able to say, look, we are confident in the fiscal management of the government, and therefore we can online and be able to have a grace period which is outside, a little outside of what was the norm in relation to what happened with the restructured debt. So we have some space, if you like, sir, with respect to being able to deal with this. But as I said, space only insofar as the fact that the repayments for this particular facility will start in 5 years, in January of 2030. And then there's some other, but yes, importantly as well, sir, is that there is the natural disaster as well as the pandemic clause. You will remember, sir, that when we did the debt restructuring, we included in all of the new debt the natural disaster clauses, which effectively says to the creditors, sir, all persons who hold the debt, that should there be a significant event that triggers the CRIF payout over the threshold, that the government of Barbados would be able to suspend debt service for 2 years. Okay? For 2 years, we will capitalize the interest, put it at the back end, and allow the government to be able to help accelerate and fast track the recovery efforts, which will be critical, sir. Will be critical in relation to a circumstance where the country may require significant resources to respond, and therefore the natural disaster clause is embedded in there. The pandemic clause as well, which came about because, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic is equally there, because when we did the debt restructuring in 2018, the concept of a pandemic at that time was not on anybody's mind, but clearly we saw during COVID that the impact on the economy meant that people still had to make decisions about how to respond to the crisis. So Both clauses are here, which is consistent with what we did with the first debt swap, and therefore these are important features which gives, as I said, sir, the creditors certainty that if something happened or from a natural disaster or a pandemic, that there's an ordered process for how the debt service will be paid, rather than holding a piece of paper and trying to figure out, sir, whether the government or the Ministry of Finance actually has the capacity to be able to pay. So the 2 years debt pause with respect to the natural disaster and pandemic clauses are embedded in this particular agreement in order to ensure that we have that space. Let me just very quickly, sir, turn to a few of the commitments that, as part of what we are doing here, that the BWA would have to, well, it's a BWA, but it's really government but predominantly will have an impact on the BWA in relation to what we have to commit to. But so remember I said, sir, that the total savings is approximately 150 million, roughly US dollars. The cost of the plant, the laying of the pipes, the PV facility, and all of that should come to roughly 110 million. We're having some contingency for 10, so roughly 100, so 110 million US, at most 120. So we've agreed that once the plan is completed and we know exactly where we will land, where those extra savings between the 110, so up to 40, if we accept that 110 is the cost for everything, up to 40 million in additional savings that the Water Authority will be able to use that money for. And some of the eligible resilience, and I'll just read, sir, for your benefit. The obviously investment under the South Coast Water Reclamation Project, including pipelines for immigration of groundwater recharge areas, the groundwater recharge facilities, installation of solar panels and associated battery energy storage, environmental monitoring and management programs at Graham Hall wetlands, which will be pre-financed through an investment loan facility, non-revenue water interventions, which means, sir, fixing leaking pipes. That's the fancy thing for non-revenue water, such as restructuring and rehabilitating the water network, improving pressure management, leak detection, network repair, equipment and asset management, system purchases, satellite data, and a whole list of things. Improvements in the wastewater infrastructure, sir, such as additional sewage connections, institutional strengthening activities such as training, capacity building, and consultancies around the topics there, as well as better financial management within the water authority itself, managing this climate disaster risk financing in relation to what happens to the utility when something happens, and being able to have, in a sense, in the same way that government has the disaster risk financing strategy and policy, to ensure that the utility equally has a similar type of arrangement that allows it to be able to map the associated risk and at least have some mechanism for intervention separate and apart from what government may have to provide for it to do. But very quickly to some of the resilience, sir, commitments. Establishment of a water resilience steering committee. Because as you know, sir, we've been talking about Barbados being the 15th most water scarce country in the world for as long as I know myself, sir. And therefore, this is intended to make sure that the investments that we make, that we started to make, but just to make sure there's a coordinated approach around that we have a water resilience steering committee. Commitment 2, improving wastewater infrastructure, sir. So basically the development of a water and sanitation master plan, sir, because clearly under the last administration they had no plan. They didn't even recognize that it was a problem because of how they treated people across the country from the north to the south. And therefore, the idea here is to have a master plan that will look over 30-year horizon, Mr. Speaker, a 30-year horizon for being able to address certainly what is happening now, but given all of the data that we're collecting to make sure then that we have a proper plan. So issues relating to physical planning development, and as you know, with more houses mean more water connections and all of that type of thing, sir. Population projections, drinking water supply, sewage, socio-economic, environmental assessment. These are things that are embedded in there. Sludge management strategy, sir, and a roadmap for its implementation. And therefore you have to be able to manage that as part of the process. You have to develop an investment plan to improve wastewater infrastructure. So of course, sir, once the facilities are built, obviously operating them and the capex around the operational expenditure, as well as the maintenance in relation to what needs to be done, is going to be a critical part of this particular exercise. So I say to Barbadians that you don't build a plant today and don't do nothing for 20 years or 25 years and don't expect something to go wrong. So you have to have a different approach to the management of these facilities, sir, and therefore that's why the capacity building and training and all that type of thing is going to be important, because if you're going to make state-of-the-art investments in the equipment, then you got to make sure you have state-of-the-art investment in the personnel to be able to run these institutions. Commitment, reduce non-revenue water losses, which means, sir, fixing the pipes, the mains, as well as the service lines. And therefore, that is part of the deal, so to speak, in relation to what BWA now has to respond to the myriad of service lines that burst across the country, as well as dealing with the structural mains that deliver water to communities. There is a milestone that speaks to the performance target defined based on APRA ratings, sir. I'm not going to get into those technical things, but that is what the language says here. Evaluation of the implementation of improvement actions identified from the performance evaluation, as well as environmental and social management planning as part of the upgrade for the South Coast. Groundwater quality monitoring and management systems, you have to be formally. This is not to say that they don't have it. This is just to make sure that every element in relation to these things now have to be properly documented, and the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, all those things are in place. As it relates to the reuse in relation to agriculture, establishing the commitment for farmers, and then there's a risk management plan to be developed as part of the commitments in relation to BWA. And then one of the critical parts really is monitoring, reporting, verification, and then obviously in relation to what you're doing, so that you know that FMF, wherever you are moving water to and from, sir, that you have the mechanism to be able to know that X thousand of liters of water left in the reservoir, they got 20 houses down there, and somehow we are seeing water based on what they're reporting in relation to their meters is not corresponding to what we are seeing leaving the reservoir. So either it means that something burst or somebody keeping the waters are somewhere in there to do something else. And therefore, these are the things that as part of monitoring and evaluation, as we have observed, that you have sometimes illegal connections and all these types of things, which when you measure, you realize that it ain't the pipe leaking, is that there are illegal connections to there, which is costing all of us, and therefore you have to be able to manage these types of things. So all of this, sir, will deliver change in some form or fashion, but ultimately it is to improve access to water and sanitation facilities across the countries for Barbadians, which I wholeheartedly support in relation to being able to address some of these issues. I want to just clarify something, sir, that was reported, because it's critical to understand. It was reported in the press, so I just want to make sure that there is absolutely clarity in relation to what will take place. So, in the press, I think it was on Sunday or Monday, it was reported that persons holding Series B and D bonds will be repaid in full. And I think that information as reported was not accurate. Now, also in the press all last week and this week, the Treasury, along with the Central Bank, put out a notice in relation to invitations to persons holding Series B and Series D to participate in what is called a reverse auction, sir, in relation to the selling of their bonds as part of this transaction. And so, as opposed to what was cited in the press, the reverse auction, which is scheduled to take place on Friday, will still go ahead as the norm, where, as we did earlier this year, I think that was done with Series D, only of up to $2 million. Persons participated in that, and therefore that reverse auction, the invitation stands in relation to interested parties, as we agreed, to be able to participate in that reverse auction. Now, the reverse auction, sir, right now, I really should have checked what it was trading at before it came this morning. Right now, if you are holding a Series B bond, you can, and you want to sell it, you can do it on the stock exchange, sir, trading in the secondary market. However, this gives an opportunity, whatever the price is on the stock market, this gives an opportunity, if you're a holder of that bond, you wanted to dispense of that participation in the auction, allows you then to be able to bid a much higher price than what is currently being traded in the market. But of course, this is a one-time transaction in order to make sure that we can get this thing done. The Series E, which is held by the NIS, will be bought at par, but the reverse auction is being done in relation to Series B and D, and not being paid at par as was reported in the press. Now, Mr. Speaker, this is really just an effort by the government, sir, to responsibly put the financing in place for an intervention that humbugged this country, as I said, for 3 years, sir. But when you look at the totality of the way that water and sanitation was treated by the last administration, sir, I think it is absolutely scandalous. This government, sir, from day one, I see the honourable member for St. Michael East, he would remember those days when there was a subcommittee of cabinet, of which he was part of that subcommittee, that met certainly not just every week, but almost daily at the very beginning of our administration, to ensure that absolute focus was brought to resolving the sewage flowing on the streets of Barbados for the better part of 3 years. And this, the fact that we were able, because at that time, if you read any newspaper in Barbados, there was no solution in sight at the time. There was no solution because for 3 years, nothing was done. And people almost started to believe that nothing could be done. But we came to office and we ensured that we found a solution, though temporary, to bring relief to Bajans, so people could feel some hope that somebody paying attention to the concerns that they have. And once we were doing that, Mr. Speaker, as I repeat it, we were dealing with the parishes in the north. Parishes in the north, to bring water to them too. So it's taken us 6 years to get here in relation to the financing. Let me say very briefly, sir, that in the beginning, as the subcommittee was meeting, on addressing the actual solution for, the temporary solution for the South Coast rupture. We were actively looking for financing at the time to figure out what to do with the plant. But all of the costs and combination, everything was just crazy, Mr. Speaker, because as you would appreciate, sir, we didn't have no buses at the time, we didn't have no garbage trucks. Everything in Barbados, sir, was just wrong. Everything was wrong with Barbados. Because the last government chose a different path to ignore the basic needs of Bajans, water and sanitation. Basic needs, as well as a whole range of other things too, but the basic needs of Bajans. So we've had to take our time to bring this solution. I've not addressed it before, but let me address it here now. One of the options that was available to us, as presented at the time, there was a CDB approach, or if you like, discussion, loan, but not a loan, but discussions, because we were talking with everybody about how to finance the upgrade of this plant. This government, sir, never agreed with the CDB nor anybody else about the financing of any loan for the South Coast treatment plant. So when people getting up there asking about what happened to this and the next, the third, because when you're having discussions, people start to prepare documents with the expectation that once cabinet approves and then once parliament approves that thing, so people could prepare. But this government never engaged with respect to the signing of any loan with CDB. No monies were disbursed to anybody in relation to the South Coast plant. And therefore, as I think it was, I don't remember which meeting was at, but this process that we hear today, anytime, sir, we engaging in a loan specific to these matters, it will come here as part of a resolution, as I'm standing in this parliament, sir, today, as a man on International Men's Day, and I hope that when we are man enough to accept that when we wrong, you ain't gonna tell the whole world that you're wrong, just accept that you're wrong, and we will accept that, just don't say no more about it. Just accept that, we will accept that. But we come to this place to tell Bajans, Mr. Speaker, what we're doing on their behalf, in their name. So nobody gonna walk up Barbados trying to make it seem like this government got money and they know what happened to the money. That is not what happens with this government, sir. That's a different government, not this one. That's a different government. And all the Auditor General reports can speak to that when you go back, especially as it relates to the Barbados Water Authority under the last government. So if people are a little confused as to which government it is because somebody crossed, that's a different subject. But this government, sir, this government, we come here and we tell the people what it is we're doing with the money that we're borrowing on their behalf. And therefore, I would hope that those persons who have been seeking to sow mistrust in the public would cease and desist, sir, because this government's record in relation to debt and the transparency around what we are doing with the money, sir, is there for all to see. And I've come here on more than one occasion to say, this is where we're borrowing the money from, who you're getting it from. These are the terms and conditions. This is what we're doing with the money. And at some point, Bajans, sir, does actually see with their own eyes with the money spending. To see it with their own eyes. And so I hope, sir, that as we engage in, I hope, a responsible debate today, that the record is clear as to which government in this country has been upfront with respect to both water and sanitation, from as far as St. Lucie to Christchurch, sir, in relation to the fact that the northern parishes didn't have water for the better part of 3, almost 4 years, and this government prioritized on budget to be able to deliver that. And all during COVID, things were in motion, and what we see now are really just the remaining efforts to what has been a total solution. That is not to say that what people are experiencing isn't important, sir, but I'm making this very simple point that this government, sir, has been responsive to the needs of Barbadians when it comes to water and sanitation. And therefore, this transaction here, sir, is a transformational transaction. It would allow us to implement a number of things that I know Barbadians will benefit from, and therefore I encourage Barbadians, as the Barbados Water Authority, as well as the other stakeholders, continues to engage on these matters in the same way that the Marine Spatial Plan is doing, sir, with the first deck swap. There's going to be a lot more engagement from government as well as the BWA on a whole range of matters, sir. And I hope that Barbadians will see that the government has been upfront with respect to all of these matters, and therefore hope that we work together, sir, to be able to deliver meaningful solutions in a timely manner that allows Barbados' future, sir, to be more secured. And with those few words, sir, I beg to move that this resolution do not pass. I'm obliged.
Honourable Member Christchurch South.
I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker. If you notice that there's a lot of literature in front of me, those are the notes I made while the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central was speaking. I don't think I breach any national security secret in saying that ordinarily I would have received the literature from this Parliament by email, and that it seems that the recent problems in Barbados may have affected this Parliament as well. And so I could not receive that email, and I don't think I'm breaching any national security secret in saying that it may be that the organizations affected by recent breaches would now include this Parliament. And so, Your Honour, I've had to make several manual notes while the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central was speaking, except that I don't feel hampered in any way. He spoke in English, and I wrote the English that he spoke. I don't intend this to be any portrait on the member, but what I have noticed is that in recent times, he seems to present new gifts. I used to know him as a very stoic and technocratic type. He has now transfigured into a more animated and partisan political creature. And the word creature is not meant to disparage. And with his talents, I would want to warn him that since he moves from the stoic and the technocratic to the political, he may wish to be warned that those who sit on that side with him, who may be more ambitious than he is, may become a little concerned that he is now less technocratic and more political and would be seen as being as ambitious as those with far less talents than he displays. So I warn him. That is a warning to him. Now, I accuse him of being more political than he used to be, and I don't wish to say that he is also a very clever man. So clever that we now find in this house that a resolution is introduced to this country by way of a newspaper. By way of a newspaper. I read of this resolution in the newspaper before the breach email reached me. And there he was a few minutes ago clarifying and correcting an article that appeared in the newspaper, which has to come through this house, a resolution that has to come through this house, except that he must now be considered as being complicit in the publication of an article pertaining to this resolution in a popular newspaper before it comes to this house. That is the stern stuff of which political ambition may be made. And I warn him, he seems to take joy and great comfort in the fact that he nestles among 29. And that he regrets the departure of one. Worry not, honourable member. Worry not for me, but worry for yourself and the interpretations of your ambitions. Worry not and be careful. I worry for you. I know where you are, and I have crossed, and you know that I understand that environment. Be wary. Be wary, honourable member. You are sounding very ambitious. As I said, you were the stoic and technocratic type. But today he presents more as a partisan political creature who is seeking to ascend and bypass those of far less talents but higher elevations according to the nature of things in that place. But those are the problems that present across the aisle, and perhaps it is none of my business. Our business here today is to deal with a resolution that increases the national indebtedness, and that is something about which the country is now concerned. I take the honourable member back to his days of technocracy, and I will ask him a few questions, sir, in your presence. He may take these questions from me as being rhetorical, but I think he owes it to this country. I believe he will have an opportunity to reply, to give the answers to these questions. And they are as follows. Are debt swap arrangements pursued by countries that are experiencing difficulty in paying their debts? You're quoted in a newspaper, the honourable member is quoted in a newspaper, giving explanation to what this matter is all about. And speaking of this matter from north to south and east to west, and nowhere in that article is any mention of the basis upon which these arrangements are normally pursued. And therefore I ask the question, and I ask it again for clarity, and so that I will be heard, and so that the people of Barbados will have some representation in here when the question is asked. Are debt swap arrangements pursued by countries that are experiencing difficulty in paying their debts? I know the answer. The honourable member for Christchurch East Central is an economist of some standing, and he knows the answer. But this is no private conversation between he and I. When he rises to his feet on the next occasion that he so rises, he will tell the people of this country what is the answer to that question. Whether the basis of these arrangements rest in a country's difficulty in paying their debts. Question 2. Again, coming from me to him through you, Your Honor, he can treat this as rhetorical, but the people of Barbados are entitled to know the answer. Question 2 is this: is government replacing local debt with foreign debt? And that is a question of particular importance. And I repeat, is government replacing local debt with foreign debt? It's a question, Honourable Member for Christchurch West, it's a question. You and I know the answer. My formerly stoic parliamentary colleague on the other side knows the answer. But I want him to tell the people of Barbados what is the answer to that question. Not everyone has a master's in economics. Not everyone enjoys the comfort of parliamentary life. Not everyone enjoys the luxury of access to the newspapers to explain resolutions before they come to this house. Not everyone has those luxuries. Let the Honourable Member, when he rises again, tell the people of this country if this government is replacing local debt with foreign debt. And I will ask the third question, which is not unrelated to the second question. Was it not government's stated objective to place more reliance on local debt? You see, we in here, the 30 of us in here, don't have the responsibility to repay these loans. The lady as far away as St. Lucie and St. Joseph and St. Andrew and St. Philip and Christchurch West, they have to repay these loans, and if not them, their children and their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And therefore, John Citizen and Mary Citizen want to know today whether this government has not breached its earlier promise, its earlier objective to place more reliance on local debt as opposed to foreign debt. Now, we know the rationale for that. We know the rationale for that. And hopefully he will find the time away from his animated partisan effusions and discourses to return to his stoic self and his technocratic self and his learned self and his educated self and his certified self, and tell Barbadians whether government has reversed that policy objective. Question 4 is a separate question. And question 4 is unrelated to the first 3 questions, but we want an answer all the same. And since he is the Honourable Member who has introduced this resolution today, he must bear responsibility for all matters that flow from this resolution. Question 4. Is there an admission that government has been pumping sewage into the sea? He laughs. Maybe at me. Maybe at the people of Barbados. Maybe at me, maybe at the people of Barbados. But the Honourable Member came here today and said, and I quote, I made so many notes, Your Honour. He said, this is the single largest transaction that this government has ever undertaken. That's what he said. Some governments build 10-story banks. Some build highways. Some build convention centers. Governments build all kinds of things. But the Honourable Member has visited us today with the announcement that this government's single largest transaction pertains to sewage. I doubt whether this government wants that to be its legacy. I doubt that. But he is more, the honourable member is caught in a different mood these days. And as I said, he is less stoic and more animated in a very partisan way. And it will therefore not disappoint him that I meet him with this quality of discourse. Is it his intention that this government's legacy, this government's legacy, will be one pertaining to sewage? Since he boasts that this is this government's single largest transaction, it is the single largest transaction that this government has ever undertaken. As I said, some build central banks, some build roads, some build large convention centers, some build out the tourism plant. This government now boasts ownership of sewage. Except that implicit in the introduction of this resolution into this parliament must be an admission that the sewage has been pumped into the sea on the south coast, where there are several hotels, but we are not preoccupied with the presence of tourists, except that that is our major industry. We are equally concerned for people who reside on that coast and people who recreate on that coast and people who visit that coast as workplaces. And therefore we must be concerned that it is not an illegitimate question to ask the honourable member, and he can refer this to his technocrats since he has departed from that realm of technocracy. He can ask them, where has the sewage been going for the last few months and years? In the sea? The question is from me, on behalf of the people of this country, not only those on the south coast, but those on the north coast, those who have an interest, a vested interest in health and safety in this country. And when he rises to his feet again, we do not expect to meet the disappointment of silence in relation to that question. It is an urgent question, and it is a question, the answer to which is important to the people of this country. Has this government been pumping sewage just off the coastline of Christchurch? And he and I represent Christchurch constituencies. And we do not speak only for borders that are artificial. We speak for a parish in a sense, we do. And we speak for a country in a sense, we do. And I want him, Your Honor, to tell the people of this country, the junior Minister of Health is in here. And I hope they allow him to speak today. His most frequent utterance is to second everything. Perhaps they'll let him speak today on the matter of health, and he will get an opportunity to say how he feels about his government. That is more than likely, and I'm going to say it. It has now ceased to be a question, except that the people believe it is a legitimate question. How does he feel about the possibility that sewage is being pumped by this government into the sea? But that's the fourth question. Your Honor, I propose to visit the details of the resolution in a way that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central did not visit that resolution. And I will do this in some detail. Now, the newspaper article which quoted him quite liberally, and he will not mind that I go to that newspaper article in tandem with what he has eloquently presented in here today in a very partisan way. And he himself referred to the newspaper article. He wanted to clarify areas of it. As I said, rather unusual. A rather unusual course of parliamentary events that you go to the papers and then come here. But that article described this arrangement as groundbreaking. What dramatic language. I did say he has departed from his stoic clothing. And he is now the most animated among them. I've warned him though. I've warned him. But the newspaper said it is groundbreaking. And the people of Barbados now are led to believe that this is something. This is the invention of the wheel. This is something that has never occurred in the history of mankind. Groundbreaking. The emergence of something entirely new. Never happened before. The Barbados government, for all of its trips overseas, has now discovered something that humankind had never seen before, had never heard of. Debt for climate swaps. Debt for nature swaps. Since 1987, these swap arrangements have been done. But this government is into something called sloganism. All you need to impress people is a slogan. And the slogan becomes the substance. And the substance disappears. It is a kind way of saying propaganda is more important than the truth. And sometimes deception is more important than the truth. And so you come to the people of this country and tell them, oh man, we have discovered something. This government has made a discovery unknown to humankind since 1987, Your Honor. When Bolivia entered into the first agreement of this nature, these things have been done 37 years ago. And you know, that's why I ask the questions, because this government is leading people into the belief that they have discovered something. Nothing has been discovered. This government has not discovered anything. And the people of Barbados need to be told this. I use the word deception. I don't think William Shakespeare is most proud of his play, Much Ado About Nothing. I will not accuse this government of much ado about nothing, because there is something, there is some virtue in what the government seeks to do. That is to say, correct the situation of sewage in a country that is very, very, very densely populated. And not only densely populated, but infrastructurally reasonably well developed. And so there is virtue in what is being done. Something is being done. But you don't wish to exceed William Shakespeare, who said much ado about nothing, and make much ado about something. And I think this government is making much ado about something, a little something. But I go back to much ado about nothing. In that play written by Shakespeare, one of the dominant themes was the theme of deception. And sometimes you sit and you observe the government and its meanderings across the state, and you listen to its representatives in here, its several representatives in here, and the word obfuscation comes to mind. A very clever concealment of reality. Very clever concealment of reality. Slogans and buzzwords and sweet-sounding words. And after 6 years, what has this government been able to point to? Well, Your Honor, I will remind you of what the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central attempted to point to this morning. I made notes. He described, I am going to respond directly to his presentation. And he used the term, the very sexy term among them, the mission critical agenda. Oh man, look, there's nothing quite as impressive as the sloganeering that is done by this government. And I use the word sloganeering as distinct, contradistinct from substance. Barbadians are calling for, he says, that mission critical agenda. And he itemized them. Garbage trucks. Was not the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central embarrassed to come here today in this Barbados, when there are people in this country who have not had a garbage collection for 4 weeks, and say to this country that a part of this government's mission critical agenda is garbage trucks, over 20 of which are lying idle in the various depots, not working. And he makes a boast, the honorable member makes a boast about a mission critical agenda, trying to convince Barbadians that this government has done something that other governments have never done, and speaks of garbage trucks, and there are people in rendezvous. Today's Tuesday, up to the weekend, they had not had a garbage collection for 3 weeks on Fair Home Gardens. 3 weeks. But he used to be a lot more stoic. He's lost that stoic composure. Now he speaks in partisan and animated ways and dramatic, and speaks of garbage trucks as a priority for this government. And I asked him to visit St. Lucie and St. Philip and Bank Hall, if he wishes, if you wish, sir. They don't give you a voice in here. I will speak for you now. Districts in this country that have not had a garbage collection for 3 and 4 weeks. And this honourable member comes to this house and this country and to the people of this country and tells them that it is part of government's mission critical agenda to provide them with garbage trucks to collect garbage. And that flies in the face of the reality that visits the lives of people in this country on a daily basis. That every time you drive through a community, you get a stench. And the stench emanates from the fact that they have had a garbage collection, but that the garbage is lying in the cans for 3 and 4 weeks. And that is untenable in a modern democracy. Untenable. So, Honourable Member, Your Honour, I say to the Honourable Member, please do not come here with that new disposition, with that new partisan appeal in his debate, and obscure the reality that visits the lives of people in this country. I recorded that he spoke, the Honourable Member spoke of garbage trucks. He went to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I recorded here that the Honourable Member, in his speech, dealing with a debt, dealing with a loan, a proposed loan, swung far and wide. Who is he trying to impress? Maybe he has impressed his neighbors, his political neighbors, not far from him. But he hasn't impressed the people of this country in saying to them that one of this government's mission-critical pursuits has been the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Console him. Give him consolation. Need I say more? Need I say more than to say that there's an entity in this country called the Queen Elizabeth Hospital? Need I say more than that the Minister of Health came to this Parliament a few months ago, I think February or March to be precise, and said that the high point of health delivery in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital was when he was a doctor there. He's not a member of this chamber, but he came here as Minister of Health. And therein lay an admission that the Queen Elizabeth Hospital was not in its best days. Yet, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central will be heard in here today to say that the QEH is part of the, let me get the sexy language, the mission-critical agenda of this government. He is mature enough that he sees nothing personal in this. He is mature enough that he sees nothing personal in this. Although he pursues his politics now with a different composure, with a different disposition, he understands that across the divide, we discuss politics in a mature way, in a philosophical way. And he is mature enough to understand that nothing in this discourse is ever personal. He understands that. And I wish him well in his ambitions. I wish him well in his ambitions. He went from the QEH to roads. Now, Your Honor, to whom was the Honourable Member speaking? We know he was speaking to you, but the microphones were turned off from the people of Barbados. When the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central comes here and is sent here on his mission to say that the roads in Barbados are a priority for this government, Your Honor, I drive down the South Coast every morning. And when the cricket came, the cricket that stopped, and I'm going to deal with that again, when the cricket that stopped the boats from being destroyed, when the government members were down at Kensington, when they should have been paying some attention to the people's boats, leading up to that great event, they decided to patch. Well, they did more than patch. I'm going to be frank here. They relayed certain roads. I don't see my friend, the Honourable Member for St. Thomas here today. They haven't found Bridgefield. Apparently Bridgefield is disconnected from Kensington. You know this government, sir, to celebrate cricket, 3 or 4 games and a few tourists. The only roads that they could fix were the roads that were arteries to and from Kensington, within a certain radius. Enough. How many? 50,000. Well, if you believe that, the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central wants me to reflect that he is down there saying that he had 50,000 tourists here over a 3-week period. He wants me to say that. Fortunately, what the people of Barbados will not see is that he said it and laughed. Because I suspect the taxi drivers laughed as well when they heard that that was the number that came here. But Let us come back to the roads of which the honourable member spoke, and I'm not going to detain you long today, sir. This government fixed the South Coast. Maybe the government ministers who should be traveling along that South Coast go home by helicopter. I can tell you all the spots that they have dug up. They dug up the place where the taxi men sit in their facility by Accra. I think they probably patched it back, but it was a massive hole in the road. I don't know which utility company did it. I hope it is not Light and Power. I'm going to come to them. They dug that up. They patched it back very badly. They dug up, there are about 3 spots between the old Vista and the Caribbean that is being rebuilt. Massive holes in the road. And this government's priority is roads as part of a mission critical agenda. That you pave a road merely to accommodate a few cricket buses over a 2-week period, and as soon as the cricketers left, you go and dig up the people's roads. And the people driving down the South Coast on mornings from St. Philip and Christchurch are extremely unhappy, and their vehicles are crying. This is the reality of life that is visiting the people of this country. Under a government that is mismanaging public works. But I will come back to the loan with some immediacy and defy the honourable member for Christchurch East Central to come in here and tell the people of Barbados that garbage trucks, the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and roads are things that are part of their mission critical agenda. There's grievous inattention to garbage collection. There's grievous inattention, no pun intended, to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And there's grievous inattention to roads, and when they repair them, 2 weeks later, they dig them up. And you know why, sir? This is happening, Your Honor, because we live in a country in which the right hand does not know what the left hand is doing. That if governance and government in this country was properly managed, the MTW and the utility companies would be coordinated. This is something that has been called for many years in this country. Many years. Except that this perfect government finds it impossible to do. And so, you lay the roads with taxpayers' money, and somebody digs them up. And taxpayers' money has to come and patch. A waste of money, but this government distinguishes itself as a government that pursues wastage seemingly as part of its financial policy. That is what this government is doing. I was in some shock when the honourable member for Christchurch East Central extended his discourse beyond garbage trucks, the QEH and roads, and spoke of law and order. Now, the honourable member for St. Joseph is absent today. The honourable member for the city is absent today. I don't mind saying that, because I wanted them to be present when the
Honourable Prime Minister.
I would not normally raise on these matters, but the honourable member is in breach of the rules, which does not allow you to speak or reflect on a member being absent. But secondly, for the record, the mother of the Honourable Attorney General has passed, and therefore I would think, and I know that the Leader of the Opposition would know that, and I would think that he would be better than that which he has tried to be just now. Thank you.
I'm obliged to the Honourable Prime Minister, and I welcome her. This is one of these rare occasions. The Honourable Prime Minister has reminded this House of the breach of the rules that you should not refer to the absences. I hope I'm not breaching any rule in welcoming her back after an extended absence. I love to see the Prime Minister here.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the honourable member would also know that I have not had extended absences from this House, and in fact, I would like the clerk of the House to get the records and show him. And the fact that I may not speak in every debate is because I have 29 seats in this House that will represent the Barbados Labour Party.
We can abbreviate that exchange by saying, to the Prime Minister of Barbados, welcome back. Welcome back, Prime Minister. Yes. And of course, to seriously, yes, before I started, I meant to. Yes, I'm about to do that now, having learned officially. And to extend it, I heard that my colleague, my parliamentary colleague from St. Lucie, I heard that he may have lost a brother. And I extend sincere condolences to him. And someone did whisper to me that the Honourable Attorney General's mum may have passed, and it is now confirmed.
Honourable member, with the greatest respect
Yes.
to you, honourable member, but you were present in this chamber at the commencement of this sitting when we as a parliament stood and observed 1 minute silence for respect in the passing of the Honourable Lindsay Bolden and the mother of the Attorney General. You were present, honourable member.
Your Honor, thank you. I did hear, no need for any commotion. I did hear of the former name, but I didn't hear the second one. So that all condolences are extended. But permit me, sir, to get back to the substance of this debate. They're very animated, and I love it. And I will not be distracted. And I will return to what I was saying when I said to you that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central came to this House today and said that one of the priorities of this government is law and order. The people of Barbados wish to hear more than that. The people of Barbados really wish to hear more than that. A priority of this government is the preservation of law and order on this day, in this social climate, in this polity. I don't think they do. I don't think they do, sir. And to law and order, he added, water and sanitation are most critical, he says. Next to law and order, water and sanitation are most critical. Didn't say a word about agriculture. He did not say a word about agriculture in a country that is now de-emphasizing agriculture as one of its productive sectors. And we heard testimony a few days ago from a lady who stated that local and Caribbean produce, agricultural produce, is cheaper than the produce coming from beyond the Caribbean. Yet, this government seems set on a path of de-emphasizing agriculture. And the evidence is there. The evidence is there because I believe that at some point in time today, based on what they sent to me, a resolution will come to this House to acquire lands for housing. And that is noble. That is a noble objective. Everybody should have a roof over his head and her head. But not at the expense of our most productive lands. And if alternative energy is going to be one of this government's major objectives, and if you're trying to impress the people of this country that alternative energy is the way to go, give the people the assurance that alternative energy will be cheaper. That is what we all expected a few years ago when we were at Worthing. During an estimates debate, I asked the then Minister of Energy a simple question with the trust towards alternative energy, with the government's trust towards alternative energy. Can you give the people of this country a guarantee that electricity rates will fall? The chamber went silent. My question had been asked. The chamber went silent. And in response to a simple and direct question, the minister was unable to say yes or no. The then minister was a lawyer, still is a lawyer, and he understands that there are questions to which you cannot give a one-word answer. With the trust, with government's trust towards alternative energy as the dominant source that drives electricity in this country, can you give a guarantee to the people of this country that alternative energy will cause electricity rates to fall? He did not say yes, he did not say no. And here's what he said to a chamber that went silent. 4 words. That is the intention. He was clever. He was clever because even then he understood that he could give no guarantee to the people of this country. Even then he understood that this government was not committed to lower electricity rates. And this government expects to visit this chamber. This government expects to visit the public life of Barbados and to have people believe that perfection resides within the bosom of this government. It does not. It does not. 3 years ago, the minister could give no guarantee to the people of this country that there would be a fall in electricity rates with the advent of alternative energy. And we all know what happened in this country last week. They have kept their promise. This government kept its promise to the people of Barbados. And we all now know that we approach a Christmas season. We all now know that we approach a festive season, a season of lights, a season of celebration. We know that we approach that with the prospect of higher electricity bills, and this government wants the public of this country to believe that perfection resides in this government. It does not. It does not. And we are on the threshold. We are on the threshold of a society that only few will be able to afford its demands. Survival of the fittest is the prospect of life in this country. Survival of those who are only financially fit. And those at the middle levels of this society. And obviously the lower levels of this society will find survival an extremely difficult task. And this government seeks to claim unto itself perfection in governance, perfection in policy. This government, I say no. No, this government is failing the people of this country. This government is failing the people of this country. The trust in alternative energy has yielded nothing for the prospects of a good life in this country. It has become the survival of the fittest. The survival of those who are financially fit and the rest of Barbados, which I tell this government, the overwhelming majority of people in Barbados are not financially fit. And life in 2025 will be a far greater struggle than it has been in 2024. And that is why the people of Barbados feel a deep insecurity about their prospects for survival, particularly when they have children. Any one of you ever looked at a child and said no? Any member of this government ever looked into a child's face and said no? Life in Barbados is now as serious as that. They know what it is to tell a child no to a simple request. Well, a lot of Barbadians are telling their children no. No joke. Much ado about nothing was a comedy. Life in Barbados is not a comedy, it's a tragedy. Yet we come here today and make much ado about something. And yet we come here today and hear a minister boast that this government's largest project to date is one of sewage. And to hear all the hackneyed arguments about sewage in the streets, and it's tired. It's tired. I have on a past occasion congratulated the Honourable Minister, who at the time, and he knows this, and I would do it again today, who curtailed the problem. The thing was in the streets and one day it was not there. Somebody did something. Somebody did something. And this government was in office. Some minister did something and I congratulated that minister. But what has transpired since then? We come to this resolution today, sir. And the people of Barbados must hear what the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central did not deign to tell them. I now have the right to say what are the terms and conditions within that arrangement with the three financial institutions. I've already said, by way of interrogation that is, I've already asked the Minister whether this course that we pursue today is not a deviation from this government's stated policy of emphasizing local debt over foreign debt. Today, quite possibly, represents a reversal of that, except that I have asked the Minister to answer the question. And I still do. The Minister went to the terms and conditions, spent far less time on the terms and conditions as I submit he was obliged to do and spent more time on partisan politicking. A hackneyed discussion, a tired discussion, a discussion which has nothing to do with the present plight of Barbadians who went in the sea and trash, nonsense. 6 years later, we're still talking about that. 6 years later, you still come into a parliament and hearing of a lost decade when this decade feels like the last decade for a lot of Barbadians. 6 years in to the subsequent decade, it feels like the last decade when parents are having to tell their children, no, you can't go to school today. And we think this is a comedy. We're in the midst of a tragedy. And if Shakespeare had to write about it, even he would not enjoy the turbulence, the chaos, the dangers, the toils and snares that visit the lives of the people of this country. And this empty and sterile politicking that visits public discourse is doing nothing for the people of this country. Tell the people of this country what is their plight. Tell the people of this country what are the government's plans. I go back to the terms and conditions of this loan. There's a portion of this loan well, let me put it differently. Within the schedule, which I saw for the first time when I came here this morning, the marginal note reads sustainability linked, and it says amount. Permit me to read it, sir. Permit me to read it in a way that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central did not read it. I am no technocrat, but I'm going to read it. For any period commencing after the first amount, SPT observation date, if the borough fails to meet the sustainability performance targets by the immediately preceding SPT observation date, an amount payable in arrear equal to the product of A, the outstanding BBD loan principal amount at the start of each loan interest period, B, the sustainability link rate, and C, the BBD loan day count fraction. Beg your pardon? Didn't hear you. You want me to read it again? I can read it again. Be not affrighted. Well, you're so afraid of there are 29 of you. Well, 28, the speaker is there. He's not partisan. Well, he's impartial. Partisan, but impartial. In here. I have merely, Honourable Member, read what I submit the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central was obliged to read. It is there. Don't ask me to interpret it. Ask the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central who presented to the newspaper on the weekend and who presented here this morning to read and interpret and explain for the people of Barbados. I have read it. I have done more than your colleague, Honourable Member. And if you want me to read it again, I will, but it is on the record now of this parliamentary debate. The Honourable Member did make reference to the interest payments. Why are you also afraid? What is it? What is it? The voice of dissent is so intolerable? I thought y'all were perfect. Well, if a government is perfect, criticism rolls off its back. It's impervious back, like water on a duck's back. What are you so afraid of? Relax. Take the criticism. Take the criticism. Are you perfect? Take it. Don't point at your watch. Take the criticism. Stop believing that every time somebody criticizes this government, it is a stake driven through the heart of the government. Take the criticism. Unless you begin to believe your own myth, the myth of your infallibility, the myth of your perfection. What? Why are you so insecure, government? Why? I'm not going to read the whole thing, sir. Perhaps when the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central revisits you, he will read the whole thing. I'm not even going to read the portion that speaks as the closing costs, the portion that refers to legal fees. Let the people live. Let the people live, but it is here, it is a document that comes to this house. And when the Honourable Member returns, let him read it. Let him read it exhaustively so that the people of this country understands in some detail what is happening with their future. Not with a recent past. Not with sterile political speeches about storms and lost decade. And come to the people of this country and tell them about their present and their future. That's what this government needs to do. A government ought not to derive its legitimacy from the successes or failures of the past. Let this government be judged on its own record. And if there's success, you will be judged on that. And if there's failure, you will equally be judged on that. And do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. And so, Your Honor, I want to remind this country that these arrangements are nothing new. I want to remind this country, as I did earlier, that arrangements of this genus were done first in 1987 between a U.S. entity and the Bolivian government. It is nothing new. I come to the people of this country with the reminder that there has been no reinvention of the wheel. This wheel was spinning for a long time. I come to the people of this country with a reminder that this government seems to have started to believe its own myth. That you say something and it becomes acceptable not by virtue of its substance, but by virtue of the fact that this government says it and repeats it over and over like Goebbels of the Hitlerian regime. The truth must now visit the people of this country. And there's nothing groundbreaking. There's nothing groundbreaking about this transaction. It is not new. It has happened before. And I can give the names of the countries that have done arrangements, debt for nature or debt for climate swaps before. Bolivia first, Costa Rica, the Philippines, Belize, Barbados did it in 2022. The Honourable Member did admit that. To be more precise, September 2022. And the Seychelles. And this is sold to Barbadians as some well, they use the word groundbreaking. I'm trying to find another word. As some miracle that has visited this country, that this country is doing something of a genius that has never been done before. And the people of Barbados are supposed to believe that. And this is not to be immodest, but if there were no opposition voice in here, the people of this country would believe that this is something entirely new. What magic, what portion of magic. Oh, this government is so magical. We are now doing things that are unprecedented, never happened before, and we are so lucky to be the beneficiaries of a loan. And this is how this government functions, on a myth. And the harsh reality is that life in this country becomes harder from day to day. Ask the average Barbadian. When this government extricates itself from self-congratulation, when this government visits the reality of honest debate, when this government visits the reality of life that is confronting Barbadians from day to day, when this government understands that beyond all these pretty words, this pretty language, that the people in this country are suffering. That the people in this country are suffering. And that the people in this country who have little children to deal with. In the month of November, they're wondering how December will hit them. Well, Light and Power has told us how December will hit us. Light and Power has told us how December will hit us. And I have nary a word to say about the Fair Trading Commission. It is a quasi-judicial body. It is an entity of the state. And I don't think that it is proper for me to come in here and use the freedom of parliamentary speech that I enjoy here, much to the chagrin of some people. But they will have to continue in their discomfort. But I will not use this forum, this assembly, to castigate the Fair Trading Commission. I know how I feel. I know how I feel about the decision. But you know, sir, that I've been a lawyer for 40 years. That's a long time. And I understand my responsibilities, even as a lawyer, even as a parliamentarian. And even in my disagreement, it is not for me to use this assembly to castigate any member of that Fair Trading Commission. Except, sir, that I want to say to the people of Barbados that the relationship between this government and the Barbados Light and Power is a relationship that deserves some scrutiny. I repeat, the relationship between the Barbados government and the Barbados Light and Power is a relationship that deserves some scrutiny by the people of this country. And if this government and if the people of this country wish to scrutinize and analyze the relationship between this government and the Barbados Light and Power, ask the people of this country to visit the Antigua model. Ask the people of this government to make inquiry into what is happening in Antigua in relation to the generation of electricity, and ask them What is the relationship of the Antigua government, and what is the policy of the Antigua government in relation to the generation of electricity? Don't let us get fickle and silly about who paid tribute and all kinds of nonsense. We're here on the people's business. We're here on the people's business. And to come in here with foolishness, a lot of silly talk, when people's light bills, is the state, is this government living in condemnation of high electricity bills? Nary a word. Government, state your position to the people of Barbados. Say how you as a government feels about the high electricity bills. Don't leave it to me. I'm here alone. I'm not lonely. I always say that I'm not lonely, because I know that my views and my interrogations reflect the views and the interrogations of thousands of Barbadians who live and suffer in this country, and who live in daily suspicion about the role that this government is playing in relation to the bills that they cannot get paid. Don't come in here with to reduce a debate to silliness. You think the people in this country concerned with that? The 25th of December will be upon us, and some child will hear the answer no. Some child in this country. And you all think that this government thinks that pretty words, groundbreaking, never happened before. Permit me, Your Honor, sexy terms, that this country must now reside in a crucible of pretty words. Except that the existence living in Barbados is now an ugly experience. And I haven't talked about crime yet. But the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central talked about crime. And he placed it high on government's agenda. Can you imagine that, Your Honor? That a government minister in this little Barbados said that crime, he called it law and order. That law and order is high on this government's agenda, and lawlessness and disorder seems to be a part of the cultural ethos of this country. And I can't come in here and criticize. I can't come in here and scrutinize. I can't come in here and analyze. And at every opportunity on behalf of the people of Barbados, I will chastise. This government is failing the people of Barbados. And this is yet another loan around the necks of the people of this country. Don't sanitize and deodorize it with pretty words. It is another loan. Don't enlist the assistance of a popular newspaper to sell it. Sell it in here. Go into the public domain and sell it there. Going to St. Lucie and sell it there. Going to Kingsland and sell it there. It cannot be sold. You can talk pretty. You can talk pretty. You have moved from the stoic to the dramatic. Last saw you dancing and saying you want hope. I don't think any parliamentarian in here blows as competent a trumpet as the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central. We have in the last few years discovered talents that we did not know existed, but I warn him, be careful, my friend, how you show those talents. Everybody, I may be pleased, I may be happy that you're such a talented man, but there are others less talented than you, but more ambitious. And although you may not be ambitious, their interpretation of your ostentations may lead them to cut you at the knees. Be wary, my friend. Be wary. But this is not about you. This is about the people of Barbados. This is about the people of Barbados who are burdened by yet another loan. This is like a cannonball wrapped in foil paper. Still heavy? Still a heavy burden in the hands of the people of Barbados. It's another loan. And you can try to sell it in pretty language. Debt. Debt for climate swap. Call it whatever you want. My friend, Your Honor, it's another loan. And I want one of them to get up and say to the people of Barbados that this is another loan. And if we are to discourse honestly, we will agree with the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central that it may be less of a burden in terms of its lower interests. But I read a portion of the terms and conditions for this country, and Your Honor, if repetition were allowed, I would read it again, but it is on the record. And so that I don't breach any of the standing orders of this House and repeat, I will ask the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, when he rises to his feet again, to read the portion of the terms and conditions next to the marginal note sustainability linked amount. Maybe it is not controversial, but for the sake of transparency and openness, please read it. Please read it. Extricate this debate from the partisan and come to the reality, the harsh reality that visits the lives of the people of Barbados. Read the entire thing. I ask the honourable member to read the entire thing. One of the notes I made is that the honourable member said, and I quote, "This is the best deal that we can achieve, short of somebody saying that they will give us $110 million. This is the best deal that we can achieve, short of somebody saying that they will give us $110 million. So therein lies an admission that the government is struggling and that they're looking like everybody else for the best deal. And he says, this is the best. This is the best, short of a gift. Well, convince the people of Barbados that yet another loan is the best that this country can do. Convince the people of Barbados of that. I began by asking those 4 questions. I will be very disappointed if this debate closed and those questions were not answered. But the answer is not intended for me. The answer is intended for the people of this country. And I hope that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East finds it possible to answer those questions. I hope that the Honourable Member or any of his colleagues on that side will be able to say to Barbadians that we are better off today than we were yesterday, and that tomorrow we will be better off than we are today. And I have not even gone to December, nor January, nor any month in 2025. But things don't look good for this country. Things do not look good for this country. And this government's purpose, in spite of the material and social reality of adversity that visits the daily lives of people of this country, in spite of all that, This government now believes that a slogan can feed a hungry spirit, a spirit that seeks peace and order and justice and truth. This government believes that slogans can satisfy the people of this country. I say to this government, no pretty slogan can make good for the people of this country. This government needs to improve its performance. This government needs to improve its performance beyond pretty words. This government needs to seriously get down to the business of governance 6 years into government. That is what this government needs to do. That is what this government needs to do. And I repeat, the mere fact that this government relies on slogans is an admission that the material reality, that reality that visits people's lives, is unsatisfactory. And that has been the modus of authoritarian governments. That is why, apart from Hitler, Goebbels was the most important minister, and Goebbels was the minister of propaganda. Goebbels was the minister of propaganda. And he was a very important minister. Are we in this country now in that state? Are we in this country now in that descent, where we take resolutions to the pages of popular newspapers before we bring them to the people who listen to Parliament, the people who invest in debates in this place to know what is happening? Are we now avoiding this Parliament as the official voice of government policy, apart from the other arm of the state? And that occurred when I saw it. I became curious. I became very curious. And I would hope, Your Honor, that it is a practice from which we will depart. That matters of state, matters of resolutions, money resolutions, resolutions to borrow, will first come to this Parliament, and that they will not go to other places, that they will be treated with seriousness. Your Honor, those are the submissions that I have made. I have noted the participants, CIBC, Royal Bank, Scotiabank, the minister will, when he replies, speak as to the full extent of the interests of those corporate entities when this transaction becomes consummated. He will explain to the country what will be the future, and I say interim interests, of those three entities in relation to Barbados's assets. He will say, not for me to say, he will say. And I believe that he is capable of saying it truthfully and faithfully, except that I await for him to say it. Your Honor, I'm obliged to you for the opportunity. Thank you very much, sir.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So I didn't intend to speak in this debate because I thought that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central acquitted himself very well. And I want to congratulate him on what I thought was a first-class speech. But it is important for me clearly to intervene and say a few things. And let me start, because this is not a long speech. Mr. Speaker, I would like the Marshal of this House, after I take this resolution, because it is clear that the member either needs to borrow glasses, he says that he analyzes, and that he clearly did not read the resolution before speaking and asking his 4 questions. And what are the 4 questions? In terms of, is the debt increasing? 2, are debt swaps pursued by countries that typically have debt problems? 3, is the government replacing local debt with foreign debt? 4, was it not stated the government's objective to have more local debt? 5, is the admission that there has been sewage pumping into the sea? Mr. Speaker, if there was sewage pumping into the sea, the Member of Parliament for Christchurch South should go and resign. Because he has responsibility for us with respect onto the roads, sorry, not the sea. He has responsibility, and he at Top Rock 7 years ago, go and listen to the speech. All of a sudden now, because a D is in front of the LP, the Labour Party, he now is in a position where he has to change his mind and his mouth. And I say, Mr. Speaker, this is the kind of thing that concerns me, but we better understand it. Because a resolution comes to Parliament, it is written in the English language. Whereas the government considers it necessary to borrow the sum of 600 million BBD, Barbados dollars. 1 paragraph, next paragraph, 3rd paragraph, 4th paragraph. No less than 4 separate paragraphs in here refers to the loan in Barbados dollars. But it gets worse. The very schedule dealing with the terms and conditions of the loan make it clear that the currency for which this debt for climate swap is being undertaken is in local currency. But Mr. Speaker, if you believe that the people listening to you have no sense and can't do their own research, then you will come in here and mislead, in my view, because is he going to say in the way that he said he didn't hear what you said when you said you were standing for a minute's silence this morning? Is he now going to tell us that he didn't read what was on this paper here too? Mr. Speaker, this is nonsense. And this is what a serious Parliament is being asked to put up with from a leader of the opposition. But he goes further, because his contention is nothing to do with the substance of the debate, nothing to do with the fact that $220 million will be spent across 4 projects without a single cent being added to the public debt of Barbados. In other words, Mr. Speaker, the same debt that we were going to pay this year, next year, 2026, 2027, 2028, and I can go on and on, is the exact same debt that will be paid. The one difference is that on the other side of the balance sheet, you're going to have an asset that is now a tertiary treatment plant that changes what was the situation for the last few decades. The current South Coast Sewage Treatment Plant in his constituency, Mr. Speaker, has only ever separated solids and liquids. It has never treated the liquids. And this government made a determination that in order to solve some problems that we have, one, that we have a shortage of groundwater. It is affecting the Ministry of Agriculture's farmers. That we have, in addition to that, Mr. Speaker, that we want to replenish the aquifers generally because of the shortage of groundwater. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, that if we have the opportunity to put a renewable energy plant on site to allow us to be able to offset the energy usage in the treatment plant, that we should do so. And Mr. Speaker, to ensure that the water gets beyond just the aquifers to the farmers in St. George and the farmers in St. Philip, that we run a pipeline all the way from Graham Hall, right along the Barbados train line, right up to river plantation. But Mr. Speaker, I go further, because if you don't know, say you don't know. If you can't read, say you can't read. If you can't ask a question, say that you didn't get a chance to ask a question. But when you highlight now ignorance on stilts, it really embarrasses me that a member of this parliament can so display that such utter ignorance or determination to mislead. And what do I mean, sir? The gentleman said that this is not groundbreaking. If you don't know, say you don't know. This is the first debt for climate swap, sir, that will get back a capital sum up front to build a project up front. And I go further, because he called, somebody gave him a note. I said, check the Bolivian one in 1987. But you know what the Bolivian one in 1987 was, Mr. Speaker? Let us give him the facts. One, that Conservation International, not the government, a non-profit entity, went and got a debt for nature swap, having used a grant of $100,000 from the Frank Whedon Foundation to purchase $650,000 of Bolivia's discounted debt. You want me to repeat it again, sir? 650,000. This resolution has a few more zeros than that. 600 million. There is nothing in Bolivia's debt that saw the Bolivian government buying back its debt. There is nothing in the Bolivian debt for nature swap that saw the Bolivian government building a capital asset worth $110 million. $120 million overall with the capital assets and projects. Nothing. But what we have in here is a leader coming in here to throw around some words and pomp and say, 1987 debt for nature swap. Go and see the reason why this debt for climate swap took primacy of place to the point where the general manager of CIBC Caribbean Barbados, whose name I did not give you notice of and will not call, but she was present on the main stage at the International Monetary Fund, along with the president of the European Investment Bank, along with the representative of the president of the Inter-American Development Bank, along with myself, to be able to speak to the rest of the world about how we were able to use the repurchasing of debt in order to be able, Mr. Speaker, finance a critical capital expenditure project and companion projects thereto for the first time ever. Now, the fact that it is the first is not here nor there, but what is here is the misleading of the Parliament and the clear understanding that the Leader of the Opposition does not know what he's talking about. The most patent evidence of it is his asking a question about whether this is in Barbados currency or foreign currency. And are we not breaching our commitment to borrow in local currency? Mr. Speaker, if this is not local currency, tell me what BBD is. He might think BBD is something else. But I didn't say that. He might think it's something else. But this is Barbados dollars that we're talking about. And let us look and see who we are buying it back from. Series B, Series D, Series E. That's not US treasuries. It is Barbados treasuries owned by the national insurance, owned by insurance companies, owned by ordinary Bajans. But Mr. Speaker, it is too easy to turn on a mic and stand up and talk. Well, I have news for the member for Christchurch South. This is not Queen's Park Theatre. He should have stopped short up there. This is the Parliament of Barbados that requires at least an appreciation with the debate that you are involved in. And what is worse, sir, is that when you go back and all the ones that he called, the first debt for nature swap that involved, and the modern debt where you buy back your debt, was Seychelles in 2015. But that was debt for nature. And Barbados' one in 2022 was debt for nature. And in every instance, when you bought back your debt, what you get is a few $1 million every year. That's what the Barbados Marine Sustainability Trust will get. Member for St. Michael South and others, and the member for Christchurch West Central will tell you about those conservation efforts. This is not a conservation effort. This is a capital project intended to protect the water resources of Barbados, intended to augment the water available to farmers so that we can have climate resilient agriculture, that we can bring down the cost of food in this country, and that we can allow those who are planting the food to be able to earn a living to support their families. Mr. Speaker, if that is not groundbreaking, I don't know what is. Mr. Speaker, this nonsense about the fact that you are trying to disparage what the minister in the Ministry of Finance has told you. By doing this, we don't have to go and look for $120 million to do any of those 4 projects. So that $240 million Barbados dollars that we are getting back in doing this transaction will now allow us to be able, yes, to spend money on the police for law and order. Yes, to spend money on roads, to be able to deal with the fact that for a decade roads were not done properly, and then when you compound that with the convection rain and the other things we are getting clearly from the climate crisis, that we have a monumental task on our hands with respect to the paving of roads and the rebuilding of bridges in this country that across decades have not been touched. And the Deputy Prime Minister can tell you why all of those things remain to be done when they were not touched or maintained at all, even when they reach dangerous levels, especially in the last decade. Mr. Speaker, we can now go and spend more money on healthcare and education because $240 million is not 24 cents. It is not $24. It's not even 24 million. And to be able to find savings of $240 million to get assets worth $240 million by simply having a different approach to how you structure your debt. What amazes me, sir, is that the Democratic Labour Party has no moral authority to speak on the South Coast sewage treatment plant, no moral authority to speak on debt, no moral authority to speak on half the things that he is trying to purport that he can speak to in here today. But Mr. Speaker, I am not going to be distracted by that because I want the public of Barbados to judge for themselves. And you know, I have in my past said, let God and time be my judge. And I am prepared to let God and time be our judge. We're not rushing anywhere. There's no election next week, so don't worry. If there was, poor fellas, you'll be in trouble. But I don't even believe in taking advantage of you because we're going to stay focused on the people's business. We put, as the member knows, an temporary outfall. Member for Christchurch East was the minister. A 12-inch line and an 8-inch line. The government took the decision to put in a redundant outfall in the event that something happened because we were concerned that in the same climate crisis, that the waters and the turbulence in the waters from storms could cause us problems. And Mr. Speaker, 4 years after we put it down, 5 years after we put it down, it did cause a problem. And one of the pipelines had a break. Luckily, it was not bad, and we were able to fix it. But at the same time, we were able to use the alternate pipeline that we put down as a matter of management. Precautionary management, the same type of management that would allow us to get involved in this debate here. You understand? And I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, that it is this absence of prudence, this absence of care, that continues to distinguish the Democratic Labour Party in its new incarnation. And it is of concern to me because I think that it is a great party that ought to be given its best chance. But quite frankly, under this leadership, it is being driven to its worst possible days. I now understand why the former Prime Minister was so enthusiastic that the member for Christchurch South should leave the Democratic Labour Party, so that he now wipes out of the record of Guinness books the worst defeats and the worst leadership of that institution in George Street. Because not even the former Prime Minister presided over the carnage and the lockout and the police that this new neophyte leader of the Democratic Labour Party has brought upon it. Mr. Speaker, it is sad. And I say to you that in life, you can choose to be a workhorse or you can choose to be a dress horse and a show horse. The truth is that the member for Christchurch South has perfected the art of acting and perfected the art of dressage and perfected the art of showing. When in truth and in fact, what is needed here is a simple appreciation that in these difficult times, he knows it. He charges bills in excess of 6 figures to his colleagues. And that if you have to find ways of saving money in difficult times, you do so. The government of Barbados is not in debt distress. Our debt to GDP is down to 105% from 177%. And in other words, put it in context. And the average person will understand that if the amount of debt that they got paid coming down, and if they can go and get a new house, and they can get a new car, and they can get an irrigation system, without having to add a cent to the debt that they owe the bank already, you don't tell me that the Bajans ain't gonna do it? That's all the debt for climate swap is. Making sure that you are doing it for the right purposes. And because of our advocacy on climate, it has meant that we were able not only to get the savings, $140 million in interest savings, Barbados currency, but 80 million Barbados dollars in a grant, G-R-A-N-T. But Mr. Speaker, to oppose for the sake of opposing, that is what has been reduced to. And the member can speak on from larboard to starboard on everything except what is in the resolution. And if he had just picked up the resolution and read it, even paragraph 1 states the limit of the Special Loans Act in Barbados currency. But paragraph 3, paragraph 4, paragraph 5, paragraph 6 paragraphs on a 2-page document. Mr. Speaker, even a primary school child can read this. So it tells me, because I know the member can read, and I know he has better English language skills than me. So it tells me that something else is amiss here. And that is what concerns me. And the bottom line is, sir, that while we are trying to be able to bring relief and create economic opportunities for people from the farmers right back through, this is being poo-pooed purely because it comes from this government. And as to the fact that it was in the newspaper, Mr. Speaker, how many times have you heard the British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, speak about the budget that his Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, delivered before she delivered it? How many times? How many times did you hear other cabinet ministers in the British government? But I don't even need to leave this jurisdiction. How many times on the day before estimates are laid in this house or debated in this house that you would have political speeches on a Sunday, far less a statement and an interview to the press? How many times? But as a member just pointed out to me, the problem that we are facing here is that the member for Christchurch South only started to pay attention to Parliament when he crossed the floor. He didn't come to Parliament. He didn't know the Parliament. He still don't know the parliamentary rules. And when he purports to know them and quote them about repetition, that was after he repeated everything in his speech 4 times each. No, Mr. Speaker. This honourable chamber deserves better from someone as learned and as senior in age to public life. He didn't come to public life yesterday. He came to public life since 1989. And for him not to be familiar with how this parliament functions week after week after week is an indictment on him, not on the rest of us. But Mr. Speaker, you ask yourself why and how. Sir, this is a serious issue. Week by week now we live in a season of superlatives. The hottest, the wettest, the driest. This morning I saw the Prime Minister of Grenada touring areas in Grenada that flooded again. There was no named hurricane. There was no named storm. But the damage was done. We know it here every day now. Rain, 3-4 hours, 2 hours, intense rain. Every time I actually feel between St. George right down to Dalkeith, I almost feel like that corridor mark off, because every time you're going across the highway, you see this black cloud, 11, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the day, and bam, comes the rain. And we've spoken about this. And the truth is that if we are going to become resilient in the next decade, we're going to have to spend almost minimum of 11.6 billion US dollars in investment between the public and the private sector. And therefore, it is not a case about being highly indebted. It is a case of being prudent. If you can get a house and a car and an irrigation system on condition that you conserve water, on condition that you use green energy in your house, and you don't have to pay the bank a cent more. Mr. Speaker, you want to take it? Not a cent more. But when it goes now to the level of value, $240 million. And then they throw away comment, oh, this government's biggest capital project is sewage. Yes, it is, because the last government did not maintain the plant. And then there comes a point beyond which a plant can be properly maintained. And once we realize that in spending money to maintain the plant, we could as well upgrade it and make it a tertiary treatment plant and benefit from the water that would otherwise go in the sea. No, Mr. Speaker. No. This is unfortunate. And Mr. Speaker, it is a sign of desperation. It is a sign of desperation of the Democratic Labour Party. It is a sign, Mr. Speaker, of trying to distort and to distract at the very time when the world is facing all kinds of problems that require discipline, require strategic focus, and as it relates to caring for people. Let us get real. The days of being able to create straw men and to fool people and deceive people, mercifully, a lot of our public are educated, and therefore they can discern and understand for themselves. Tell me, and I don't make, in fact, I'm going to ask him and put him to the point. A government that is in bed with the Barbados Light and Power, who got the Light and Power waiting for a license for 6 years, as we follow the law and the processes. A government that is in bed with the Light and Power, who got the Light and Power waiting for a decision on a rate increase that it has not had in over a decade. It doesn't even make sense. The gentleman is just stringing words together for the sake of stringing words. And I therefore end as I started, sir, because I say I wasn't planning to get involved in this debate. But when a member of Parliament, no less a leader of the opposition, who has before him the resolution, and the resolution is stated in Barbados dollars, and then you're going to ask if the government is deviating from its practice of wanting to borrow more local currency? Mr. Speaker, no. We expect even better from him of that. And when you add to that all of the other allegations and all of the other, you mustn't come in Parliament if you talk already about this in the public. Well, guess what? He interested in form in Parliament, and we interested in explaining to people so that people can understand what we're doing for them. That's the difference. And if I have to do it over and over to be able to explain to the people of Barbados, I am not a show horse. Not one. Our duty is to break it down and to make it understandable. And if at the end of the day, we can get all of these projects, everybody, the president of the European Investment Bank was insistent. This is the first time they have ever done a counter guarantee in a debt for climate swap. The president of the Inter-American Development Bank knew that the fact that we are taking all of the money, we're not taking conservation savings year by year by year by year, as we have done in the debt for nature swap, that will give us anywhere between 50 to 60 million US, 100 to 120 million Barbados, over a 15-year period. Not this. The tenders have gone out already for who will build this plant. Remember, for Christchurch South can speak, for Christchurch West can speak to that. And that is why I am prepared to say, let God and time be my ally. And I do so with a calm assurance as to what the outcome shall be. Because, Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt where the money is coming from. This money, 600 million, is being used to pay down debt that we have. And that debt ranges from 4.5% to 8% for the Series D and E bonds. And for the Series B, 3.75%. We are going to bring this debt in. Same sheet, 3.25%. The member for Christchurch, East Central, spoke to the fact that there are targets. There are targets for the last debt for nature too. And what are the consequences of the targets? It's not like the Credit Suisse loan that the Democratic Labour Party brought in here in December 2013, where the penalties went up by hundreds of basis points. Member for St. Michael South Central can speak to that. This debt, if you miss a target for a quarter, will go up by 10 basis points. You know what 10 basis points is, sir? 0.1%. In other words, it's not 0.2%. Those are the two amounts, depending on when it comes, that there would be the penalty. 10 or 20 basis points, 100 basis points is 1 percentage point. But then again, you need to be familiar with these things to know what we're talking about. And the reason why it's called a sustainability linked bond is that basically, so long as you do what you're supposed to do, you're good. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, you'll get a rap on your knuckles and you try and bring it back in within 3 months, rather than it being a permanent rise. Every time Barbados' debt was downgraded, we had to increase our interest payments by 500 basis points. Sorry, 50 basis points and 100 basis points, not 500, 50 and 100. But that is what we are being subjected to in here. And if the honourable member would just simply read and ask a question, and he would now understand that debt for nature swaps and debt for climate swaps come in different forms. This is groundbreaking. But apart from anything else, forget the groundbreaking part. Bajans will get $240 million in value without it having to come out of the taxpayers' pockets. Break it down. It ain't coming out of no taxpayer pocket, not a dollar, not a cent, not a yen. It is coming out purely of taking our existing debt, and instead of paying 8% and 4.5% and 3.75%, we pay only 3.25%. And we get a treatment plant, we get a pipeline, we get a 7-megawatt solar system with battery storage. And Mr. Speaker, we will get anywhere between $9 and $12 million every year for 5 years for the Barbados Water Authority. That will not come out of a bill or a taxpayer's pocket. Mr. Speaker, when those things happen, it becomes easier for me to finance the people in the Bell and the Bellevue and Licorice Village and Bailey's Alley, because we're not looking for new money for the sewage treatment plant. If we had to look for new money for that, we wouldn't have the money to spend in Bailey's Alley or in the Bell to give people in the Bell and Licorice Village for the very first time in the history of this country, pipe water. No, Mr. Speaker. No. And this is what this House has just been reduced to? No, Mr. Speaker. I don't normally deal with the member for Christchurch South. He's correct. Because I feel, sir, he wants to know what happened with the member for Christchurch East Central, why he's so partisan. I know the member for Christchurch East Central well. And the one thing I know about the member for Christchurch East Central is that he detests betrayal, and worse than betrayal, he detests ungratitude, ungratefulness. You know what the old-time Bajans tell you? Ungratefulness is what? Worse than witchcraft. You hear me that say so? And when the member for Christchurch East Central acts and speaks in the way that he does, it is because he has witnessed firsthand what it is to have betrayal. He has witnessed firsthand what it is for a member to leave constituents who canvass in rain and sun, sometimes with him when the other member was not even present. And not a word of thank you, not a word of any kind of appreciation. No, Mr. Speaker, you can't have morals when it suits you and ignore them when it suits you. That's not how we teach our children. And as for this nonsense that this government feels is perfect, how many times I hear, Mr. Speaker, have I said that this government is not perfect, that this government is not omniscient, and that we are not omnipotent, to the point where I have said it over and over, because I recognize that we are not sitting an exam at Harrison College. That's for people who are obsessed with Harrison College. Not for me. I'm in the business of trying to make sure that people can live better and easier. And as for the question, are you better off today than you were under the Democratic Labour Party? Ask it, ask it, ask it. Because I know that the businesses that couldn't open on the South Coast, because nobody wanted to come and eat in the businesses with sewage in the car park or running right out front of the business, ask them whether they're better off. I know that the people who are now getting reverse tax credit, earning $2,100 a month, it's $2,090 a month, $25,000 a year, never got it under the last government. I know that the people who are not paying taxes earning between that same $25,000 and $35,000, ask them if they're better off. And Mr. Speaker, I'm going to get the same member for Christchurch East Central to come in here and remind him of all of the tax cuts that put more money in people's pockets. And you know what is the clearest evidence of it, sir? But if he can't read a resolution in words, I don't think he will be able to read a table with numbers. The savings in this country has gone from just over $8 billion in 2018 to just under $14 billion today, Mr. Speaker. How do you think it get there? If the disposable income was not being given back to the people, that is the proof that they put in. And Mr. Speaker, it is sad. Is he asking the people who didn't have a single bus? Ask the member for St. Michael Southeast. How many buses get by? And then another 30 come in January. He wanted to know about the garbage collection. We too are concerned about it. That is why the government just found $15 million to buy new garbage trucks in this country. And this is not the first time we are buying garbage trucks. We had to buy garbage trucks when we became the government because the last government did not have. They didn't buy buses. They didn't buy garbage trucks. Mr. Speaker, the equipment that the hospital is now concluding the legal work for, $130 million in equipment for the hospital. Are we better off? He heard somebody else say that and win an election and feel that he can do the same thing and win an election. That's why I tell you that this is all now, it's a little too transparent and a little too much for us to take. Because as somebody would say, all that know what happened under them ain't dead. All that know how they had, I didn't even get to the big ticket one. Ask the people who just graduate from the University of the West Indies. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 7 straight years of graduations where people can graduate freely without having to look for a cent to pay in tuition fees. Are we better off? Mr. Speaker, I am prepared to let the people of Barbados answer that. But I say to him, remember what they say, ungratefulness worse than witchcraft. Because he didn't get in here in this House of Assembly telling people that they were worse off. He got in this House of Assembly in Christchurch South by telling people that they were better off. His biggest problem is to determine whether he will, Mr. Speaker, be able to look in a mirror and recognize who he sees. Because when he looks in that mirror and plays the speeches from before, he will have to ask, is that the same person? Other than a little gray, is it the same person? He will have to ask himself that question. Because I know what I heard him say. And I know what is recorded for posterity. And I know what he now comes in here to try to stay, to keep half a party together. Because the other half gone wrong. And the other half gone wrong with good reason, because they don't understand how an authentic solution to the leadership of the Democratic Labour Party can be a person who crosses the floor from the Barbados Labour Party and who has left them already. Left us twice, left them once. So his track record is leaving without notice. Not just in politics, we've heard that in law too. Cause a whole trial in Turks and Caicos representing a whole premier. 3-4 months delay. Because the judge said he did not even have the decency to tell the client. He has never seen anything so. But if the judge had even talked to us, we would have told him that he did it in 1989. He did it in 1999. He did it in 2000. He did it in 2008. And he did it again in 2024. In law, that is known as similar fact behavior. Admissible even if there was a breach of hearsay. Very clear. So, Mr. Speaker, I didn't intend to speak, but I had to because, quite frankly, I believe fundamentally that if we can have more debt for climate swaps, I serve notice that the government is going after a debt for social swap. I co-chair the Sustainable Development Goals, which is fundamentally about development and bringing development to people. And if we can reduce our interest rate by buying back more debt and use the savings to increase Barbados' social capital, to do for the disabled community what I said 2 weeks ago when I spoke in here, when he said he didn't see me for how long. But he just happened to speak in the resolution for the disabled community. When we can buy and do more stuff in healthcare, when we can buy and do more stuff in education or community development or crime prevention, that is what a debt for social swap will give us. But Mr. Speaker, when you criticize the advisors, and I want to thank our advisors, I want to thank the Ministry of Finance, I want to thank the Barbados Water Authority, I want to thank all who have worked literally like this, in lockstep, to bring us to this position today. It has not been easy, but it has been worth it, because what we get in exchange, Mr. Speaker, do you know that $240 million I want to tonight. $240 million, Mr. Speaker, is the equivalent, and I can put it in context with our revenue. Because clearly, people feel that we're talking about 10 cents and 20 cents in here. And it is important that Bajans have a sense, Mr. Speaker, of what, in relative terms, these 4 projects mean. Because when we see the building go up, we don't necessarily appreciate that the building went up and money was paid. Mr. Speaker, do you know that for the entire year, we don't expect to get more than $490 million in income taxes? So that getting 240 million is the equivalent of half of the income taxes that the government of Barbados took last year or will take this year. And that's just to give you scale. The debt for nature swap that we did in 2022 will only garner us half of that, but over 15 years. And with the time, the price of money obviously changes because of inflation. In this instance, we draw 240 million immediately up front within the majority now, and the rest to the Water Authority within a 5-year period. Mr. Speaker, the facts speak for themselves. If Latin was allowed in this parliament, because that seems to be the only language that leaders of the Democratic Labour Party understand, res ipsa loquitur. I am obliged to you, sir.
Honourable Leader Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 3:15 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chairman be suspended until 3:15 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honourable chairman stands suspended until 3:15 p.m.